Right, welcome to this episode of our program Daily Debate. As usual, we will be discussing an important debate. Today we'll be speaking about Sinai, the developmental projects that took place in Sinai. Egypt is rolling a very ambitious development projects program for this peninsula that is supposed to be adjoining the peninsula with the Suez Canal area. The leadership has been putting this very particular area in the forefront of the priorities, and the government is in continuous efforts to implement the very comprehensive strategy that has been started since 2014, that is 7 years ago. Over the past 7 years, the state spent over £650 billion on development projects in the peninsula. Enormous work has been done so far. 5 tunnels were constructed beneath the Suez Canal to link Sinai with the central cities of Port Said, Ismailia and Suez, and also this 5th one that was recently inaugurated by the President, Africa with Asia. 5 floating bridges to facilitate the movement of citizens and goods, 6 sea harbors, and 2 land ports in the cities of Taba and Rafah were also upgraded. Sinai Peninsula involves 5 industrial zones in the cities of Bir Al Abd, Central Sinai, Abu Zinma, El Masaid, and El Qantara Sharq, in addition to the construction of a new industrial zone in central Sinai on an area of 78.4 thousand fidans. The government allocated around £469.3 million to finance 8,317 micro, small and medium-sized enterprises for Sinai residents until February 2021. We'll be focusing on the peninsula, the development projects that took place there, the potentials of this area, and how we are very much eager to see this area part and parcel of our homeland. We'll be speaking about that with our dear guest, Dr. Maha Mustafa, Professor of Economics. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Before I delve into a discussion, let me first take the first top stories of the day. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met with Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Ministers of Finance, Industry and Trade, as well as head of the Armed Forces Engineering Authority. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said President Sisi gave his directives to finalize industrial complexes currently under construction, as well as to prepare studies to establish additional complexes with the aim of producing industrial supplies, meeting the needs of local markets, achieving self-sufficiency and supporting the national economy. During the meeting, Minister of Industry and Trade Naveen Gema reviewed stepped-up efforts in coordination with other ministries and concerned bodies for enhancing the country's industry sector and removing all obstacles facing the country's plan to expand the establishment of industrial complexes. And moving on to our next top story of the day. Also on Thursday, President Sisi met with Commander of the Naval Forces, Vice Admiral Ahmed Tawfiq, Head of the Armed Forces Engineering Authority, General Ihab Al-Far, and a number of high-ranking military officials. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said during the meeting the head of state was briefed on the achievements regarding mega projects to develop and protect the country's north coast beaches, namely the Mediterranean beaches. The President gave directives to continue implementing projects related to coastal beaches protection nationwide in line with most advanced environmental and engineering standards. The head of state also instructed preparing accurate studies to avoid the erosion phenomenon, to protect facilities and invest along the coastline. Right, before we move on with our discussion with Dr. Maha, let's first have this quick report. And President Sisi inaugurates 6 tunnel to connect Africa to Asia among new national projects in Sinai. Let's watch.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi witnessed the inauguration of a number of national projects for the development of the Sinai Peninsula, including the key Ahmed Hamdi II tunnel, which connects Africa to Asia in an event in Suez. The inauguration ceremony was attended by Prime Minister Mustafa and several state ministers, including Defense Minister Mohammed Zeki, along with the head of the Suez Canal Authority, Osama Rabia. The Ahmed Hamdi II tunnel is the fifth tunnel built by Egypt in the last 2 years to connect Sinai to the mainland and Africa to Asia. In 2019, Sisi inaugurated 4 tunnels linking Sinai to the mainland, 2 in Ismailia and 2 in Bursaid. The Ahmed Hamdi II tunnel links the Nile Delta and the Sinai Peninsula with the aim of facilitating the movement of citizens and goods to and from the west of the canal. President Sisi said that the new tunnel is expected to double investments and job opportunities in Sinai. The first Ahmed Hamdi tunnel was built in 1981. The inauguration ceremony also witnessed the opening of 35 new roads in Sinai, with head of the Armed Forces Engineering Authority Major General Ihab al-Far saying another 16 roads are under construction within the Sinai Development Project. President Sisi said that the road network will have a significant impact on Sinai and the rest of Egypt. He added that by the end of this year, the country will inaugurate 3 roads spanning more than 1,000 kilometers that will cut through agricultural land in Farafra, Tushka, and Shar el-Wainet. He noted that the volume of work that has already been achieved in constructing roads is unprecedented, noting that there is still more work to be done. The president revealed that the state will soon have over 12,000 kilometers of newly constructed roads, including the 7,000 kilometers that the state has already constructed and developed since 2014. In 2014, Sisi launched the National Road Project with the goal of developing and extending Egypt's 23,500-kilometer road network.
Right, welcome back, and let me again welcome our guest, Dr. Maha Mustafa, Professor of Economics. Thank you again for being with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Let me take it from the very beginning. And over the past 7 years, the state has spent over 650 billion pounds in development projects in Sinai. How do you read that? How is this significant?
Okay, that's a very broad question, and it tackles so many points. But the first reading that comes into my mind is a political vision.
Actually, that is the point. Please continue.
Okay, so we're on the same grounds. So this amount of money spent on this peninsula, which never happened in the history of Egypt before, it signals a lot. The most important is the political vision of the regime in place, or of the president, as to say. If you want to know where an economy is heading, you check its political agenda. And the projects that top the agenda tells you, are these quantitative aspects, qualitative aspects, growth, development, and so on. A project like this, topping the priority agenda of the regime, of the current regime, shows the political vision here. It's all about development, mainly. So it's more into qualitative aspects. And the most important, or the core of all of this project, is the human being. So it's tackling the people, the community. Without communities, you have no connection. And without humans, you have nothing, basically, no matter how much resources you have. So it's a project that makes someone proud and happy. Let me put it in very simple terms. Today, I don't see a need listing all the achievements, because you have already done that in the report right now. You have already done that also before they come into they get into the report. But let's talk about the importance of Sinai, the beauty of the peninsula, and how does it affect Egypt and the world.
No, you are taking my episode into one answer, one direct answer, because we'll get to that.
Okay.
Globally, how the world and
I'm
insights.
sorry.
But
No intention.
suddenly, you have taken. Let me here take development in Sinai, because development in Sinai took a number of phases. We're speaking about a number of sectors that have been in this strategic plan. So we're speaking here about infrastructure, that's so 6 tunnels, roads, bridges, highways. We're speaking about education, and that was very much extended into Sinai. That's the human aspect. We're speaking about housing units. We're speaking about economic zones. Why do you think this strategy, as you respectively said here at the very beginning, when you look at a regime, I prefer saying it a leadership to a state, when you look into their agenda, why, from your point of view, is the leadership putting Sinai in the forefront of their priorities?
Okay. Very good question. Actually, I said you look into their political agenda.
Exactly.
It's all about politics. Actually, politics rules everything. So I have some interesting facts here, and I will get into this point when I talk about the importance of Sinai. To make it like in a story, and to make it very simple, Sinai inhabits 600,000 people. 600,000 people live there, mostly in North Sinai. Yeah, of course, more or less. And it is nearly 61,000 square kilometers. And it represents 6% of Egypt's total area. There's a lot of sixes here. Did you notice that? So these are facts of Sinai. Now, the importance of Sinai, it's just unbelievable. It goes back to so long. Number one, it's a sacred spot. It's a religious, significant area for 3 major religions in the world. It has the oldest monastery. It has synagogues, chapels, mosques. So it's holy, it's sacred, it's divine, and it's spiritual.
Indeed.
This doesn't just make it important on a national scale. It's a humongous importance on an international scale. Now, with all these tunnels built under the Suez Canal Road, connecting 3 continents together, Asia, Europe, and Africa, imagine the tremendous amount of opportunities that will open. Job opportunities, housing, living, and so in the amount of investments that will proceed. So they know what they're doing, and they know what they're tackling, the leadership, to put it to your quotation. So the importance of Sinai to Egypt also is very significant, let alone these points I have just tackled. First of all, it's part of Egypt since the first dynasty, which goes back to 3100 BC. It's rich in heritage and culture and language and tradition and jewelry and clothing and cuisine. So it has a heritage package intact. It has a religious package, which we just mentioned, and these two give you a historical package. So these are 3 angles on their own. We still didn't tackle the rest. So this also explains why it is so important. Now, Sinai on its own is able to lift Egypt into complete economic recovery, because it's a major source of tourism revenue, for example. It's a major source of hard currency. So there's so many reasons, other than economic reasons, that are very vital to put Sinai on the top of the agenda of the leader. Now, a brief history about this. Sinai was colonized since 1969, and it gained its independence in 1989. Now, since 1989 until 2014, it was totally neglected and marginalized. Not totally, but tremendously. Now, this neglect, the outcome was extremely harsh and dangerous not only to the peninsula, but to all of Egypt. Now, with these valuable treasures and resources totally left idle like this, it became breeding grounds for problems and for crisis and for
Yes.
terrorism. And so it became from a sacred, holy, peaceful place to a dangerous, fearful place.
Let me just comment here. We're speaking about two different parts of Sinai because there is the South Sinai and there is the North Sinai. So the South Sinai has seen lots of developments in between the area of after we got Sinai back until 2014. We have seen Hurghada, we've seen Sharm el-Sheikh, we have seen Taba, we have seen some work in there. North Sinai was the one that showed lots of negligence.
But yet South
And-
Sinai is way below its potential.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And this is why the whole peninsula is being put in the forefront this time. But here you spoke about the sacred Sinai, because Sinai has been very sacred, as you said, respectively, to all three religions, including definitely the religious, the holy, how do they call it? The holy movement of Jesus and his family when he came to Egypt. Moses and his, and he was there taking his people, and definitely Hajar.
Yeah. So it's the Muslim, Christian, and Jewish importance.
Indeed. But beside that, Sinai, with all the resources, you know, when we call this is an area where its sand is richness. So we're speaking about mining, we're speaking about area, we're speaking about location, we're speaking also about how important it is from the economic aspect. I totally understand the political one or the vision you have been speaking about, but this also has other economic significance. Tell me how the leadership is putting both in parallel. Indeed, politically it is very important. It has been always an attraction for colonization, but also there is this economic importance.
Okay.
Please.
The leadership is doing a very wise move. It is tackling the Bedouins, it's tackling the people. It is tackling 26 communities, according to my reading. So it knew where to start from. This is the correct takeoff. So when you please the people and you make them happy and you make them feel affiliated and respected and you get them back their dignity, this is the real achievement.
Indeed.
And this is how these people will help the projects in the pipeline to flourish, actually. So the real engine is the people. Now, for so long, Bedouins have felt completely neglected, completely marginalized. This made them lose complete sense of belonging and affiliation.
Yes.
It's like the country is not theirs. The country doesn't know of them, remember them, facilitate any service to them. So this created
It's like they are
grudges.
not integrated to their homeland.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it creates grudges and hatred. And they know that they're humans and they deserve rights. And this is their country. But too much grudge has escalated across the years. And so this resulted in too much problems. Now, the idea of developing Sinai, this is how the idea comes. Everything starts with an idea. The idea was actually since the 60s, but there was no real action taken, no real implementation. And because investments are touristic and they cluster along the Red Sea, and without strong infrastructure, there was no support for comfortable living, comfortable housing, and so the potential of Sinai was never met.
Indeed.
Because why? Yes. Why? Because there was no political will. So I'm stressing here on the importance of the political will, what it does. Political will is the implementation, is the action. So now in 2014 with this leadership, what is different between this leadership in the 60s? The political will. Okay? So all of this changed under this leadership, and this has become one of the biggest and the best projects for economic recovery for Egypt, the project of Sinai. With this peninsula, this is a very important peninsula. It brings in tourism, revenues, hard currency. This is called transforming Sinai. You know when you transform?
Yeah.
It's transforming Sinai. This is the real political vision of this leadership.
A very inhabited area from one that was completely
That's what I was just going to say. Now, what will this transformation do to Sinai? Now, it will do a lot of things, which you already mentioned, the economic gains. There are economic, social, political gains. We will get into that. But more importantly, as we said, we need to focus on the human being. So it will actually narrow the developmental disparity between Sinai, the Nile Valley, and the Delta.
Yes, because it links all these areas all together.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so it will end the vicious cycle of the long-keeping Sinai as the poorest region. Now look at the irony here. It's the richest and yet the poorest. And that's what's so sad. It's the richest.
Yes.
Culture, heritage, religion, religious spot, holy spot, resources, you name it.
Enormous.
I mean,
Enormous.
I can't. That's why I said you name it. We don't want to go listing here. And yet, it's the poorest. So that's really that's an irony. It's a paradox. So this lack of economic growth and lack of job opportunities and lack of employment, it drove the Sinai inhabitants out of Sinai, moving on to the Nile Valley and into Delta, and further aggravating the disparity and enlarging the gap. Now, through this humongous project, the potential of Sinai can be met, or will be met, because of this project, and hopes to attract investments. And the most major thing is to create opportunities and jobs, to make the Sinai inhabitants settle in Sinai and not willing to leave, and attract others to settle in, and hence reduce overcrowdedness in urban centers elsewhere, and flourish the area.
As this open horizons of new job opportunities.
Exactly.
And yes.
And communities and areas do not flourish, Yamona, without development, without the industrial zones you mentioned, without economic investments, without human capital investment, of course. So it becomes a living peninsula. And so it becomes attractive. And it will not just attract on a national level, it will attract on an international level. So this project actually, now also you mentioned a very important word here, which is infrastructure. Now infrastructure, as me, I always put infrastructure under developmental qualitative measures. To me, it is not quantitative measure, it's a qualitative. It increases the quality.
Because it opens everything. It's the base.
Exactly. We call it crowding in. So it crowds in. It injects.
Facilitate the injection.
Injects people.
Yes.
It injects investment. It injects projects. It injects tourism. It just injects. And when you inject money. And when you inject money, you flourish. So this project addresses the population shortage. You know that there's a population shortage in Sinai?
As you say, 600 for an area.
It's 600,000, and the area is 61,000 square kilometers. Now, there's a very important economic point here, which is called underpopulated area. Now, when areas are underpopulated, then the ratio of people to land becomes imbalanced. And so you don't reach the potential, and you don't gain the highest GDP.
Don't forget that there are areas that are very much overpopulated, and we're just living on how much, 6%?
Yes,
of
exactly.
Of the whole country? Right, before we move on with our discussion, Dr. Maha, let me here take this other report. And President Sisi witnessed the inauguration of Bahr al-Baqar wastewater treatment plant, and that's another very important project described as the largest plant of its kind. Let's watch.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi inaugurated the Bahr al-Baqar wastewater treatment plant, which is the world's largest plant of its kind. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Defense Minister Mohammed Zaki, a number of ministers and senior state officials attended the inauguration ceremony. Sisi stated during the event that the plant's cost hit 20 billion Egyptian pounds and its production capacity is 5.6 million cubic meters per day and will provide water to North Sinai territories to help in the reclamation of 400,000 fadans as part of the national development projects carried out in Sinai, along with enhancing the state's policy for the optimum use of available water resources. President Sisi watched a documentary titled Springs of Hope during the inauguration of Bahr al-Ba'r wastewater treatment plant, the world's largest plant of its kind. The documentary is produced by the Armed Forces Morale Affairs Department. The film depicts the maintaining water resources is the most important priority for the Egyptian state to expand the agricultural lands. It added that the Egyptians succeeded in the past 7 years in establishing several projects in the field of wastewater treatment. The documentary showed that Bahr al-Ba'r wastewater treatment plant treats 5.6 million cubic meters of wastewater to reclaim 456,000 fadans in Sinai. As many as 21,000 engineers, technicians and workers participated in this huge project, which has a cost stated over 16 billion Egyptian pounds.
Right, indeed. As the president said, if people want to live, then the fate should be willing to give them that life. Sinai development is a big and ardent challenge. And that was really described, I'm quoting the president himself as saying that. How do you view the pace of developments existing in this peninsula so far, and how do you view the dimensions of the strategy that was put for development there?
Okay, the pace, it's like fighting against time. Besides, I mean, this is what the president has made us used to. Because when he started the Suez Canal project, it was also fighting against time.
3 years, no 1 year.
Yes, so obviously this is his strategy. He doesn't like to waste time, and he likes to implement. Yeah. So, and he likes to get things on the ground or to make them concrete. So I don't think he likes to listen to agendas that go into double digits, for example, like a decade or something. No, he wants things fast, and he wants things prompt, and obviously he knows that he is capable of achieving that. So we are used to the pace of this leadership, that it's a fast, concrete, action-oriented pace. So this is how I see. So I was not surprised with
That's a very precise description, you know. Please
I wasn't surprised with the outcome of the project since it started in 2014, because he got us used to, we got adapted. Adaptation is a very important, very strong theory. So he got us adapted. So applaud. I mean, it's a humongous and tremendous project, because I mean, when you have too much neglect, then you have too much work. I mean, just like anything, if you neglect your house for too long, then you have to renovate it for too long as well, or you have to renovate it for too much. So, and this is why this project is a humongous project, because it tackles every single channel or every single angle. So, no, I'm not surprised. The pace did not surprise me. The achievements haven't surprised me, because, I mean, this has been now, what, for 7 years? And every year there is actually a progress. And, but what's very interesting is the, their extreme determination. The extreme determination. I mentioned the political will.
Yes.
But the determination is fascinating, because I mean, we have also seen this before, and others have made us adapt to opening projects and starting and never continuing, correct? and
Very
without
much.
listing names, I mean, it happened in so many projects in Egypt. But this time there is determination. No, we start something, we complete it.
Indeed, that has been on since a few years. We start something, we complete this
Since
thing.
2014.
Right. Let me here take a strategy was put, enormous work was done. Let me take so far the gains, because we're speaking on different levels.
Okay, we come to the core now. This is like the body of this episode. Now the gains are extremely long. We'll try to narrow it down, but I'm going to subdivide them into political gains, economic gains, and social gains.
Indeed. Please do.
Let's start with the political gain, because we already now know it's a political will, it's a political vision, it's a political agenda. So politics is very important. Now the political gain, number one, security issues. So there's increase in security. There is increase in stability. Once there's security, automatically there's stability. There is a reduction in the spread of radical groups that spread because of the reduction in population. That's what I meant when it's underpopulated.
Yes.
Yeah, it's an underpopulated area, and on a political level, this spreads radical groups. And there's another economic level, I'll come to it later. And so, and then escaping war and escaping conflicts, combating extremism, and reducing the threats in national security due to cyanide population shortage. One of the main gains, political gains, is 600,000 inhabitants become pro-government, not anti-government. And so end of terrorism. So look at I mean, we mentioned like 8 or 9 political gains here. And they all rotate around stability and security. And you have no idea how important that is.
Of course, it's the base of everything.
It's the most important point for anything, just to walk on the street.
Indeed.
And then we come to the economic gains. Where do we start? Number one, increasing development. I always start with development, qualitative aspects. And when you talk development, then you're talking sustainable development goals. So you are in parallel with the UN SDGs, with the Egypt vision of 2030.
And for Africa also.
And for Africa as well, of course. And then increase in GDP, which is gross domestic product or income. Increase in the business investments, increase in trade, because we just mentioned the canals under the Suez Canal, the tunnels, I mean, integrating or linking the 3 continents together. So imagine the amount of trade. Increasing tourism. Tourism falls under the economic aspects. Now in tourism, look at the subdivisions in tourism on its own. You have medical tourism, you have religious, spiritual tourism, you have sea tourism, you have land tourism, you have culture tourism, you have heritage tourism. So do you see this package? Just tourism? And so increase in hard currency, increase in revenues, increase in tax revenues for the government. When people get employed and their job opportunities and their investment and there is trade, so you can be taxed. Taxing increases government's revenue, and so it will increase the capability of government spending. And so the government will be able to provide more public utilities for the citizens, which will enhance their standard of living and welfare. When the government collects taxes, it will pave more roads, it will build more hospitals, it will build more schools.
Yes.
And this will enable people to have higher welfare. And the most important economic point, which we just mentioned right before the report, is the optimal income per capita. When I mentioned that it's an underpopulated area, so we need people to go and settle in. Let me make it clear or simple. Why are there countries like New Zealand, like Greenland, like Canada, that open the door for immigrants to come in?
Because they need population, more population.
Exactly. Because they have a lot of land. Land is abundant, and the number of people to utilize this land is low. So this reduces the income per person, just like in Australia.
The ability to utilize.
Exactly. So they need an optimal, we call it the optimal in economics, or the best. So to reach the best level of income per head, you need a certain ratio to balance between land and between people. So this is why you have overpopulated economies that need to reduce the amount of people utilizing the land, and you have underpopulated economies that you need more people to increase to be able to utilize the land, to reach the optimal or to reach the best.
And here is the term, the GDP per capita is increases when you go to...
And this is why it will increase as time goes by and as we finish the project.
Indeed.
Now we come to the social.
No, before we go to the social, because there is something that is introduced for the first time, because that was not really made before in previous strategies. Introducing industrial zones. Because 5 industrial zones are those in those areas.
That falls under the economic, yes, investments and trade and...
Yes, but industrial zones, that opens horizon of investment opportunities, not just Egyptian ones, but also FDIs. Yes, moving to the social one, please go ahead.
So, now we come to the social aspects. Number 1, which is the most important, is restoring human dignity. Now look how beautiful it sounds. Before, I mean...
Did you see my smile?
Yes, I mean, we already mentioned very beautiful political points, very beautiful economic points. But when you talk about human dignity and human pride, that's another category. People at the core, connecting communities.
Because they are telling me it's 1 minute. So before we go, I need the conclusion here, and I need it very much quickly.
Okay, let me just finish this point.
What is still lacking? I have only 1 minute.
What's lacking? Okay, then I have to read it then. We need continuous monitoring and evaluation programs to make sure that everything is in place. We need public-private partnership for faster and more projects. We need appropriate movement to preserve environment and culture in the region, because the human race has become ignorant and unfair to culture and environment. And this is a very important point. Why? Because the peninsula is still not polluted. It has been neglected. Maybe this is the best thing that happened. No, I mean, the only good outcome is that it's green. Exactly. We need to continue keeping it green. And if we do that, then we are tackling or enhancing one of the very important pillars of the SDGs, which is climate change. We need to conduct a committee to monitor and preserve the heritage and the culture and the environment. It's very rich there.
It is.
And in conclusion, I can say that the development and the spending in Sinai is unprecedented. It has never been witnessed before in the history of Egypt. It has a very positive impact on the national level, and it will place the peninsula on equal footing with the rest of the country after decades of neglect. Also, after 2030 completion, Sinai will be presented in a new form to the world. And this will never happen except when it's reborn. And this is what will happen. Sinai will be reborn.
It will be reborn with the new republic. And with your recommendations, I leave it here. Dr. Maha Mustafa, Professor of Economics, we thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Dear viewers, many thanks for watching. Next Sunday would be our next debate. Until then, it's good night.